Manga, a cultural phenomenon in Japan. The style of comics has led to millions of copies being sold worldwide every year. Manga is also responsible for the creation of anime, a style of animation which most of the time follows the same art style that is used in the manga. Today we are going to dive into the creation of manga and the people who make them, to find out their history and their inspirations to create not just works of art, but one of the most popular mediums in the modern creative arts industry. From Ghibli to Mappa, JoJo to Jujutsu Kaisen, we find out about the following things. What drives these manga artists to create their franchises? What are their inspirations to their work? How do they make mangas come to life? And how has it impacted other mangas, animes, and the Japanese culture? There has been an increasing rise in the popularity of manga in just the past decade alone. According to an article from the Guardian newspaper on how manga conquered the world by Alison Flood, written in 2022, in 2012 an estimated total of 434,000 manga books were sold in the UK alone, equivalent to the value of around £3.17 million. Compared to a decade later in 2022, the sales of manga have more than doubled to 1.8 million copies sold in just the UK alone. These stats also follow a similar picture in the US, as sales have skyrocketed in just 1 year. In 2020, 9.68 million copies of manga were sold there, compared to just 1 year later in 2021, where sales have more than doubled to over 25 million copies sold. And we haven't even gotten started on the impact of manga in Japan, with 40% of all books that are sold in Japan are mangas. To find out about the sudden increase in sales, we should start by taking a look at one of the most popular manga titles of this decade so far. Chainsaw Man is one of the most popular manga and anime series that has been released this decade so far, and was one of the most popular anime in 2022 on the anime streaming service Crunchyroll, and is only going to continue its ever-growing popularity with another series coming soon. The story of Chainsaw Man follows Denji, who ends up saving a chainsaw dog creature named Pochita, which Denji confused with and gives him the ability to transform his body into chainsaws and fight off devils to save Japan. The creator of Chainsaw Man, Tatsuki Fujimoto, created the manga series in 2018 for the Weekly Shonen Jump magazine in Japan, with the first story arc being completed in late 2020 and the second story arc currently ongoing, with an anime series being made in 2022 by the anime production powerhouse Mappa, who treat their workers like crap, forcing them to speedrun animating their episodes to get them out as quickly as possible. Tatsuki Fujimoto is also an interesting character, which we have found out when we had researched about him for this documentary and how his unique personality and inspirations were adapted into the manga. Fujimoto had a wide range of inspirations which helped him make the manga. Some of Fujimoto's inspirations also included his own personal experiences, such as with bullying from women, which inspired him to create female characters which have a tough, egotistical and dominant personalities, mainly following the characters of Makima, named after a chainsaw brand, and Power, who is the definition of not being a vegetarian. We also don't have that much information about Fujimoto's history, as most of it has been wiped from the internet. However, the internet has found some stuff about him, which most of them have been extremely, how shall I put this, mental. This includes the only photo of him that we could find from the internet being an old YouTube video of him attempting to levitate, running a fake social media account pretending to be his sister, even though he does not have a sister nor a social media account, which has been deleted from the app formerly known as Twitter, has openly talked about eating his partner's dead fish and his sexual preferences, which links to his inspirations for some of the female characteristics in Chainsaw Man. Fujimoto's insane personality is quite public, unlike a lot of his past, which Ryan, the director, was researching him had to use sources from Reddit. However, this has become one of his main drawing points to popularity, as fans of the manga love his unpredictability and crazy behaviour. I would also like to mention that Tatsuki Fujimoto does not have that much input when it comes to the anime made by Mappa, but to be honest, he probably thought that they were underpaid and overworked and probably backed out a bit. This led to Mappa mainly doing their own thing with the anime, which I do want to mention, as in the opening credits there are a lot of different references to films. This includes Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction, Thor Love and Thunder, Attack on the Killer Tomatoes, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, The Big Lebowski, and of course the main film inspiration, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. all of these pop culture references are cool little Easter eggs in the anime. However, one mangaka takes these pop culture references to a whole other level. When you think of manga, what series do you think of? Chainsaw Man? Demon Slayer? My Hero Academia? There are loads that you could probably think of, but one series that has stood out the most in the past few decades has to go to JoJo's Bizarre Adventures. This shonen series features multiple different plots and stories, with the first manga book of part 1 releasing all the way back on January 1st, 1987. Since then, the creator of the franchise, Hirohiko Araki, has boosted the series over 9 different parts, with different themes, settings, and some even being set in different universes. These 9 different storylines each have their own names too, with their own inspirations to match along with their stories and historical contexts. Part 1, named Phantom Blood, was first written back in 1987 and was set in the late 1800s in the UK, mainly in Liverpool and London. This can be known from Jack the Ripper being one of the characters in Part 1, who was a real serial killer in London, most prevalent for murdering 5 women in 1888. Part 2, named Battle Tendency, was set in the late 1930s and 40s America and Central Europe, with the story mainly following the Pillarmen, who were discovered by German scientists, powerful beings who were being used to assist the Nazis, with the fascist group being featured frequently in this part due to the historical context. Part 3's Starlight Crusaders jumps in time from the Second World War to present day from when Part 3 was first written in 1989. This part is located in multiple different places around the world, including Japan, Egypt, and Pakistan. This story then continues in Part 4's Diamond is Unbreakable, which is set in 1999, a couple years in the future from when Part 5 was first written in 1992 and is predominantly set in Japan. Part 5's Golden Wind switches the narrative completely, but is also set in the future of 2001 and follows the characters through Italy. Part 6 jumps in time to 2011 and the narrative changes to focus on the character Jolene Cujo, and is the last part set in the original timeline with JoJo, as the other parts focus on an alternative timeline. Part 7's Steel Ball Run is set all the way back in 1890. Part 8's The JoJolion jumps forward again to 2011, with the setting being in Japan's east coast, which was heavily damaged or destroyed in the 2011 Tohoku earthquake, one of the largest earthquakes to ever have been recorded in history. And Part 9's The JoJo Lands is set in Hawaii in the 2020s. Part 9 is still an ongoing series, which means there is more to uncover as the story progresses. Unlike Fujimoto, there is a lot more information which we were able to gather about Hirohiko Araki, the creator of JoJo's Bizarre Adventures. One of the bits which I did mention earlier was about the pop culture references in his work, which there are loads of, especially with music from the 70s, 80s and 90s. These references can either be from stands, which are powerful avatars generated from its user or characters in the franchise. The first prominent stand named after a music artist or band is Vanilla Ice in Part 3. The use of references from music artists then continued to become a huge part of JoJo. Think of a famous band from the 70s, 80s and 90s, and they will probably have a reference to JoJo. Some examples of these references include the stand Killer Queen, named after the hit song by Queen. Sticky Fingers in Part 5 is a reference to the album by the Rolling Stones. Guido Mister's stand Sex Pistols is named after the famous band with the same name. Enrico Pucci's Made in Heaven stand is named after the solo song by Freddie Mercury and was originally named Stairway to Heaven, named after the song by Led Zeppelin with the same name. Even the name JoJo is a reference to the song Get Back by the Beatles, a band which has multiple references in the franchise. There are loads of other stands which going over them would take too long, but other bands which have references to JoJo include David Bowie, Black Sabbath, Elton John, yes, Elvis Presley, ZZ Top, The Who, Talking Heads, Pink Floyd, Fleetwood Mac, Green Day, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Billy Idol, Toto, Simon and Garfunkel, Franz Ferdinand, U2, Beach Boys, Lady Gaga, Snoop Dogg, Kanye West, The Police, Pet Shop Boys, Oasis, The Clash, Savage Garden, Bob Dylan, Prince, AC/DC, King Crimson, Michael Jackson, Lionel Richie, The Bangles, Guns N' Roses, Pearl Jam, and many, many more which I would go into detail about, but we will be here for a while and I don't have enough time to talk about each one in depth. There are other inspirations that were taken to create JoJo from both an artistic point of view to the location and historical references, which I've already talked about a bit with both parts 1, 2 or 7 being set in the 1880s or late 1930s. For example, in part 5, where there were a massive emphasis on Italian culture due to the location being set in Italy, Araki had taken inspiration from Italian statues to present his characters, which can definitely be seen from multiple different poses in the manga and anime. His art style has been influenced by the manga Fist of the North Star, written by Tetsuhara in 1984, and the French artist Paul Gauguin, who is an influence with his experimental style of self-portraits and use of colour. Araki had also written a book named Manga in Theory and Practice, which goes into detail about the fundamentals of making manga, storytelling, art styles, and how to create mini stories called one-shots, which are normally short manga stories which can be told in only one volume, unlike most mangas which have multiple different volumes or are released weekly on the Weekly Shonen Jump magazine in Japan. With Part 9 currently being made and is started to release in Japan in 2023, Araki has announced that this would be his last series that he is making in the JoJo franchise before retiring. I would also like to mention that he is 63 years old and he looks like he's 30, which makes the internet think he's a vampire. From a photo taken of him from 2020 when he was announced as one of the designers for the opening ceremony at the Tokyo Olympics, he looked exactly the same as the photo of him from the 90s. After over 35 years of writing the JoJo mangas, Hirohiko Araki has become one of the highest respected mangakas in history. JoJo's Bizarre Adventures has become an icon in the manga and anime sphere and still holds its relevance decades after its first release all the way back in 1987. And although the manga series is entering its final chapter, it will most likely continue to be a driving force in the manga and anime communities for years to come. Although some mangas have indeed ended with an actual conclusion to their story, such as Demon Slayer's manga ending in 2020, Mob Psycho's manga ending in 2018 in Japan, or Attack on Titan which ended in 2021, which, by the way, the Attack on Titan anime did not finish until 2023 due to MAPPA creating about 12 different final season chapters to make more money. However, there has been some cases where the manga story does not end, either it be through the mangakas getting burnt out, neglecting the story, going on to do other things, or them passing away. Which one of these mangakas who have left a massive impact on the manga community left too soon. There have been quite a few cases of mangakas pausing or even stopping their manga series, either it being because the mangaka had wanted to go on a hiatus, such as with Vagabond by Kahiko Inoue, which is still in the middle of a story arc which was abruptly paused in 2015 with no return date of the story's continuation due to the artist's mental health. Bastard by Kashui Hagiwara was left on hiatus since 2010, or more recently Hunter x Hunter scaling back its publishing due to the artist's deteriorating health. And, as of a few years ago, the manga community sadly lost one of its most beloved and talented artists, Kentaro Miura. You may not have heard of him, but he is one of the most legendary manga artists in history and is most well known for Berserk, a historical based manga series set in the medieval era with some of the best storytelling and artwork you will see in any seinen manga. Born to a family with an artistic background, Kentaro was able to learn his art skills from a very young age and made his first manga when he was just 10 years old. His manga inspirations featured a lot of early mangas from the 80s, including Fist of the North Star by Tetsuhara and Devilman by Kiyoshi Nagi, which these inspirations can be shown in the similar art styles that Kentaro uses. Berserk's storyline also heavily focuses on the seinen principles of manga, with extreme graphic detail and a dark narrative and themes that are not for the faint of heart. Every panel in the manga has extreme detail, from characters to world design. Each panel is a true work of art, and this level of craftsmanship is extremely rare in the manga industry. Although the story was still meant to be ongoing, near 2021, Kentaro had suffered from some health problems, and on May 5th, 2021, he had passed away due to heart complications at the age of 53. The death of Kentaro Miura sent shockwaves around the Japanese cultural industry due to the fact that his work has been used as inspiration in manga, anime, and even video games. Some of the most popular manga titles such as Claymore, Blue Exorcist, Black Clover, and Attack on Titan's mangakas have all linked that they have been inspired by Kentaro's work. Berserk's use of historical storytelling techniques was a factor in the inspiration for another popular historical manga series, Vinland Saga. The creator Makoto Yukimura cited on IMDb that he was inspired by Berserk. In Vinland Saga, there is a lot of historical context from real-world historical events and characters from the Viking era, with the use of historical events also being used as inspiration in Berserk, such as the medieval warfare from the Thousand Year War in Europe to inquisitions to the Mongol Empire, which were references to help build up the world of Berserk's setting. Anime such as Sword Art Online, Metal Gear Solid, and Castlevania also take inspiration from Berserk, and the Dark Souls video game series is also heavily influenced by the world building and characters being similar to the manga. The impact of Berserk is still prominent in not just the manga and anime industries, but also a lot of other creative industries like video games, which just goes to show how much of an impact this manga series has. The legacy of Kentaro Miura will continue to be felt for decades to come and will spread across multiple different types of media across the world. And it's not just Kentaro who has impacted the manga industry, it's every manga artist which I've mentioned above who have paved the way for the manga and anime industries for years to come. The growth of the manga industry is expected to continue even more in the near future, with sales of manga continuing to grow and become more accessible for a worldwide audience. The manga industry also has a promising, bright future, from newer artists finding their footing in unique ways, such as with Tatsuki Fujimoto, who has had a massive impact in the manga industry, with his associates going on to create their own manga titles, including Dan 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 by Yukinobu Tatsu, Hell's Paradise by Yuki Kaku, and Spy X Family by Tatsuya Endo, which are all current popular ongoing titles in the anime and manga community. Hirohiko Araki's JoJo's Bizarre Adventures created one of the most beloved and memed manga series and is highly respected among the industry, to Kentaro Miura's influence and legacy still being felt after his death in 2021. The anime industry's growth in the past few years has also been a factor in the growth of manga sales, with shows such as Jujutsu Kaisen gaining large audiences and was the most popular manga series of 2022. In conclusion, the future of the manga industry is bright, with a new generation of manga readers and new titles getting increasingly popular. Japanese manga has definitely become one of the most exciting industries in media publishing, and I can't wait to see what the future holds.